A hyperlapse is basically a moving time lapse. It creates a very interesting, impossible kind of camera movement, and it's actually not that difficult or time consuming. So, seeing as this is one of my most requested tutorials, this week I want to show you how I shoot my hyperlapses.
That's my niche, play my role, what you hold, low boy best on reach. Yo shit dirt, you get
The first and most important step to shooting a great hyperlapse is choosing a great location. Obviously, you'll need a lot of open and preferably flat space to move around in. You'll also need to find a location with a point for you to focus your camera on and move towards. It's especially helpful if this point is located on a vertical line. That vertical line is why you see so many hyperlapses of buildings or towers. Having an additional line on the ground leading up to that point, like a sidewalk, is also extremely helpful because you can follow that line while you're shooting. The only gear you need to shoot a good hyperlapse is your camera and your lens. You can use a tripod and you'll get a slightly more stable shot, but if you shoot it handheld, it's significantly faster. Using a wide-angle lens is definitely better for a hyperlapse because it's going to make that camera motion appear a lot larger and more dramatic. I won't be using my wide-angle lens because I broke it, so there's that. A good hyperlapse does take some editing, so you're going to want to shoot in a pretty high resolution and quality so that you can have that flexibility to edit in post. Make sure to enable your camera's guidelines and center marker, and if you have an in-camera level, using that can definitely be helpful. Before you start shooting, you need to decide on a camera motion for your shot. This could be moving towards your subject or away from your subject. You could move past it or around it, but the easiest one is definitely just moving straight towards that subject. Next, you'll need to figure out how much you need to move and how many photos you need to take to complete that camera motion. For every 24 photos you take, you're going to have 1 second of your final hyperlapse. So if you want to shoot a 4-second long hyperlapse, you need to take 96 photos. This means that the more distance you have to cover, the more you'll need to move in between your shots. When I shot this hyperlapse, I wasn't covering too great of a distance, so I only took 1 step in between the photographs. However, for this one, I was covering a significantly longer distance, so I took, I believe, 10 steps between those photos. Once you've done that, you finally get to move on to actually shooting that hyperlapse, and the process itself is actually quite simple. All you need to do is focus on that point, get your camera level, take a photo, and then take a step forward and repeat. Making sure that you're moving in a straight line, just line it up, take a photo, step forward, take another photo, step forward, and keep going for a long ass time. Once you've taken all of your photos, we'll take those and play them rapidly together, like a time lapse or a stop motion animation. At this point, after all that work and all that time, you can finally look back and just appreciate the wonderful hyperlapse that you've created. Just kidding, it looks terrible and we have loads of editing to do, so let's do that. I'm doing my editing using a program called HitFilm Express, but if you use Premiere Pro, you can still follow along with this tutorial and achieve a very similar effect. Start off by importing all of the photos for your hyperlapse as an image sequence, and if your software doesn't allow you to import an image sequence, then just go into the settings, change the default image duration to a single frame, and then drag all of your pictures onto the timeline. Then you can re-export that timeline and you'll be able to view your hyperlapse as a video. It's basically like stop motion. Now that you've turned that group of photos into a single video, it's time to stabilize that shaky camera motion. Warp stabilizer can be quite helpful, and a lot of people use that for their hyperlapses, but if that doesn't work, then there's a method that I prefer to use, which is manual stabilization using motion tracking. I know that sounds scary, but just stay with me, it's really not that bad. Using a 2-point track the focal point of your hyperlapse, as well as another point in the image that moves similarly. That's why it's really good to have a vertical line as your subject, because having that second point as another point on that vertical line will give you easily the best result that you can have. If your second tracking point is in a completely different part of the frame than your first one, then you're going to get weird warping, rotating effects when you stabilize your shot. So just make sure you pick something that has a motion similar to that of your main point. Once you've finished tracking both points, use that 2-point track to stabilize the position and rotation of your clip. And finally, just add some motion blur to the entire shot to create the illusion of that fast motion. At this point, if you did everything right, you should be done for real, and you should be able to go back and just enjoy watching your hyperlapse. It really is quite satisfying. Before this video ends, I want to do something a little bit differently this week to get you guys more engaged with this video and make this channel more interactive. Just go out and, using the techniques that I've discussed in this video, make a hyperlapse of your own and send it to me. And if you send me a hyperlapse that you've done yourself, I will include it and shout you out in a video not next week, but 2 weeks from now. I think this will be a great way to not only feature some of your work on my channel in addition to my own, but also to kind of allow me to see how my tutorials are helping you, or maybe not helping you, and see any impact that these videos are having on what you're creating. I'd love to make my tutorials more of an interactive process, so if you're interested in that, go ahead and send me something that you make using this video, and I'll include it in the video 2 weeks from now. But anyway, that is all for this week's video. I hope you enjoyed it, learned something from it, and if you did, do feel free to share your support by leaving a like on the video or even subscribing to my channel. I upload new filmmaking tutorials every single Saturday. Keep creating, and I'll see you in the next one.
This my niche, play my role, what you hold, little boy best don't reach. Your shit dirt, you get curved, I just saw and reap. With that ease, hella clean, rips all on your knees. That's that work when you hurt my head.